Little Brother, Chapter 6. The Letter. May 6th, 1780. Walter is going to love this, Basil exclaimed. He stepped back, wiping the dust from his hands on his workman's apron, and surveyed his handiwork. A single bear claw dangled proudly from a leather thong on his neck. It was his only reminder of the frightening beast that he had killed in the woods near his home. Basil had just finished adding decorative wood trim along the edges of the ceiling in Walter's cottage. The new wood molding was perfect. Indeed, it was stunning. The dark brown stain of the decorative oak contrasted perfectly with the clean, whitewashed walls. It looked very refined and fancy. Basil grinned. Yes, Walter and Abigail would be very proud. Luxuries such as this fine wood molding were a rarity among households on the edge of the Carolina frontier. They were difficult to mill and produce and very expensive to purchase. Most ordinary folk simply could not afford such luxuries. Basil had noticed Walter admiring some of the beautiful trim molding on one of their visits to the sawmill at New Market, the largest Quaker settlement in Guilford County. The price was extremely high and far outside of Walter's budget. Still, Basil noticed how much his big brother had stared longingly at the exquisite wood. So, after shooting the bear, Basil decided to devise a bit of a surprise for Walter. He loaded his prized bear hide into Henry's wagon, along with 4-quart jars of freshly rendered beer grease, and headed off to New Market in search of a trade. Bear furs and fat were something of a rare and precious commodity in Guilford County. The grease of a bear was the perfect lubricant for the cloth patches used in the barrels of hunting rifles. It was also used to soften and moisten leather for making saddles, straps, and bags. The bearskin would, of course, make an excellent bed cover or rug. As it turned out, the trade with the Quaker miller came quite easily. The owner of the sawmill in New Market, Mordecai Starbuck, was anxious to procure a supply of bear grease. His brother and business partner, Philemon, was a well-known and respected leather worker. He produced saddles, riding gear, belts, and bags for most of the local stores. It was clear that Mordecai also coveted the large, luxurious bearskin. He had never seen such a fine fur before. It took very little haggling for Basil to successfully obtain 110 feet of the wood trim. That was plenty to complete both the upstairs and downstairs of Walter's cottage, with just a little to spare. Mr. Starbuck even included a special jig for cutting the corners of the wood molding so that they would match perfectly. While he was in New Market, Basil made one more trade. He bartered the remaining bear claws, along with the animal's teeth, to the local blacksmith in exchange for 10 pounds of small finishing nails. He was certain that would be enough to complete the job. It had taken him all day to finish his work. He measured and remeasured every single piece of the molding. He used the jig to cut the corner pieces with absolute precision. He definitely did not want to make any bad cuts and waste any of the precious wood. His tools had functioned flawlessly. His measurements were perfect. He could not have been more pleased. "Enough carpentry for today," he declared. "I am ready for some supper." He secured all of his woodworking tools in Walter's storage shed, quickly strapped his English saddle onto the back of his spunky mare, Geneva, and then guided the animal along the trail toward the homes of his older brothers. They lived less than a quarter mile from Walter's cottage. Basil knew that Samuel was scheduled to serve a 3-month enlistment in the militia soon, and he wanted to see him before he departed. Basil soon caught sight of the rooftop of Samuel's house. He had many fond memories in that old home. It was actually the first house that his father had built when he brought that family to North Carolina from Baltimore, Maryland. Basil had spent most of his childhood in that house. He actually liked it better than their new brick home in Guilford. Samuel and his wife Mary took ownership of the farmhouse when James and Elizabeth Billingsley moved into town in the spring of 1774. He cupped his hands to his face and called out, "Hello, in the house!" The door flew open and 4 small children ran out into the yard. There were three little girls and one boy. All of them squealed with delight. Little Samuel, age five, chirped, Uncle Basil, have you come to play? Basil grinned. He climbed down from his horse and looped the reins across the limb of a small bush. He knelt on the ground and welcomed the four children as they swamped him with a wave of hugs. No, Sam, I do not have time to play. I have been working on Walter's house and just stopped to visit with your papa for a bit. Papa is gone, declared Sarah, age 7. He left just after dinner today, added her twin sister Mary. Where did he go? Samuel's wife, Mary, appeared at the door of the house. The militia got called up early, Basil. He and John departed in a hurry at midday. Basil's smile disappeared. He stood upright and shooed the children away. Why all the rush? Their captain received word of a Tory attack over in northern Rowan County. Their regiment left in pursuit of the raiders. Mary frowned. He barely had time to pack anything. Maybe they will not be gone very long, Basil encouraged. Mary sighed. I hope not. The work is quite overwhelming here whenever Samuel is gone. She rubbed her large belly. She was expecting their 5th child. When will the baby come? Asked Basil, worried. Mary smiled reassuringly. Not for another month, at least. But doing the basic tasks here around the house is getting harder. Little Samuel and the twins are a big help, but there's only so much they can do. Well, I will help all that I can. I will come by every afternoon to check on you, Basil promised. Mary nodded. I would be most grateful, Basil. I am sure that Jean would appreciate a visit as well. She is so unhappy and so overwhelmed when John is gone. Basil grinned. I will be sure to check on her too. He glanced around the yard. Do you need anything right now? I hate to ask you, Basil, but I could really use a load of split wood in the kitchen, and the cow milk is probably about to burst wide open. It will be my pleasure to assist you, madam. Basil bowed teasingly. I shall relieve the burdened cow first and then attend to the firewood. A couple of buckets of fresh water would be a big help as well, Mary pleaded. Consider it done, milady. Basil tapped little Samuel on the head. Sam, go and fetch your hat, and then join me in the barn. We shall have us a milking lesson. Yes, sir, Uncle Basil. The boy bounced excitedly toward the door of the house. Mary smiled warmly. I sincerely thank you, Basil. You do not know how much this means to me. Basil nodded with all seriousness and sincerity. It is the least I can do, Mary. You are family, after all. He turned and marched toward the barn. He spent the next hour with nephew Sam at his side, catching up on the many chores that his brother Samuel left undone due to his hasty departure for the war. As Basil worked, he prayed fervently for their success in battle and for their safety. Once all the chores were complete, Basil once again received a flood of hugs and kisses from Samuel's children as he prepared to mount his horse for the ride home. He leapt onto the horse's back, tipped his hat to his grateful sister-in-law, and then turned the mare in the direction of his house. It would only take a few minutes to make the quick 1-mile trip back home. He just hoped that his mother had a hot supper hanging in the fireplace. He he had worked up quite an appetite since breakfast. He whistled a happy tune as he leisurely guided his trusty horse toward the comforts of home. Basil burst loudly through the back door of the Billingsley house. Mother, what is going on? There is no smoke coming from the kitchen. What is for supper? I am famished. He rounded the corner from the hallway into the parlor and discovered his mother and sister Martha locked in a sobbing embrace. Basil was thoroughly confused. Mother, Martha, what is the matter? The beautiful maiden, Martha, pulled away from her despondent mother. Oh, Basil, she sobbed, it is positively awful. What is awful? He demanded. What has happened? It is Walter, poor Walter, Martha replied. Basil's heart leapt in his chest. What manner of tragedy had befallen his brother and very best friend? What is the matter with Walter? Is he injured? Basil gulped. He is not dead, is he? Tears began to form in the corners of his eyes. His body shuddered and trembled. Elizabeth Billingsley rose quickly to her feet and moved toward her son. Oh no, Basil, he is not injured or dead, but the army has taken him. The army? What army? Have the British impressed him into service? Basil blurted angrily. Elizabeth wiped a tear from her cheek with a silk handkerchief. No, dear, not the British. Virginians. Continental Army regulars in Salisbury. Basil's mind reeled. It did not make any sense. What would the Continental Army want with Walter? He was simply going to Camden to fetch his fiancée and marry her. I do not understand, Mother. How can the Continental Army simply take a man? They do not do such things. I know that the British enlist people against their will, but I have never heard of impressment by our own patriot armies. Elizabeth turned and retrieved a piece of paper from the mahogany table beside the front window. Your brother sent me a letter, she declared. It does not reveal much, but it should help you understand what has happened. Basil, hands trembling, took the letter from his mother. He reverently unfolded it and began to read. Dearest Mother, I am writing you to inform you of a great misfortune that has befallen me on my trek to Camden. I encountered soldiers from Virginia, encamped near Salisbury, who desired to confiscate our wagon and horses on the public roadway. I refused their orders and attempted to proceed on my way, but was apprehended and taken into custody. The Army has, indeed, taken ownership of our wagon and team for military use. In our attempt to flee, Gabrielle and I apparently injured one of their men. He was not injured seriously, but it was enough to cause them to regard us as criminals. In lieu of pressing formal charges against us, the military authorities gave us the option of enlisting in the Virginia line. They demanded that we choose between jail in Virginia or service in the Army. Needless to say, we are both now soldiers encamped here with the Virginians. I have been compelled into enlistment for the period of 3 years or until the end of the war. I believe that we will march to Charlestown very soon. Thus far, I have been unable to get word to Abigail. There have been no postal rides dispatched to the South for several days. Please, if you are able, write to her and inform her of my predicament. Please make her understand that none of this is of my own choosing. I simply could not endure incarceration in the North. Please tell her that I am very sorry and that I will contact her as soon as I am able. Gabriel is here with me as I am writing to you. He would be most grateful if you could inform his family regarding our situation. Pray for me, dearest mother, as I am greatly afraid of the fate that awaits me on the battlefield. Pray that I might see home again and that my marriage, though delayed, still awaits me in the not too distant future. Your devoted son, Walter. Basil slowly lowered the letter. His mind reeled. He was sick with worry for his brother. He stared wide-eyed at his mother. The British have Charlestown under siege, Mother, Basil stated flatly. I know, son. The city will fall soon. Everyone says so. His mother nodded. Indeed, I have heard the same predictions. Basil blinked. Once the British regulars are out of Charlestown, there will be all-out war in the Carolinas. Walter will surely be involved. I know, Basil. The boy took a deep breath. I must go and join him. Gabrielle Tate will be of no use to Walter whatsoever. Gabe is a good friend to Walter, but he is a fool. I dare say he will run from the first sign of danger. I will stand and fight with Walter. You will do no such thing, retorted his mother. I shall not allow it. You are only 15 years old. I will not give my consent to the army, and the army will not take you without it. But mother, you will heed my word, Basil Billingsley, she scolded him. Besides that, what would Martha and I do without you? You are the sole provider for this household. Your brothers are helpful, but your sister and I rely upon you. Martha rose and walked to Basil. Mother is right, little brother. The war is no place for you. We do, indeed, need you here to take care of us. She wrapped her arms around his neck. It breaks my heart to watch James and John and Samuel march off to war every few months. And now we have Walter to worry over as well. She shook her head. No, Basil, you must remain here at home. Mother needs you. I need you. Basil sniffed and raised his shoulders proudly. I shall abide by your wishes, Mother, for now. But when I am of age, I plan to join the militia in Guilford County and fight alongside my brothers. I pray that by the grace of God, this horrible war will be over and done before that day comes, Elizabeth declared.